on Nova Legends podcast, I have two of my favorite officials, two guys that have given a lot to Northern Virginia basketball and continue to work and to make sure our games go off as scheduled and that the officials there do a great job for us. I have Scott Bach-Hansen and Adam Brick. Guys, great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Julian.
I feel like I wore the wrong shade of blue here, guys. I wish you would have let me know what I was supposed to do, but hopefully my navy blue will go with your Carolina. I guess it's Carolina blue.
Didn't you know Wednesday was Carolina Blue Day?
Yeah, UVA guys, we don't get that memo. They don't.
You do. You just destroy it.
Yeah, we destroy it. Well, look, one thing I want to talk about today is there is a shortage of officials that does affect being able to do especially 3-man crews, but to do a great job on the court. And we were just talking offline about some of the ways that officials can stay in the game. I haven't been working for a while. One of the reasons why is my knees. But guys, I've been out there this year. I've seen Gil Mack and what's my friend? I'm forgetting names. But what are some of the ways that the older officials can stay in the game longer? I mean, what are some of the keys, Adam? I know you've worked at least about 30 years now. What are some of the ways that the older officials can stay in the game and we can keep some of that experience on the floor?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it's luck, quite honestly. I mean, I've been at it. Somebody asked me the other day or over the Christmas break at one of the tournaments how long I've been doing it, and and I think I'm in like 35 years now. Which is just sounds crazy to me. I think there's two things. One is obviously physical health. And I've, just like anybody else, I've had my ups and downs with some injuries here and there, mostly unrelated to basketball. Mine are typically related to skiing, which I'm not very good at. And I think the other is just hopefully it's still a fun avocation for people to be engaged in it. I mean, if it's not fun, we're not doing it for the money. And so I do think it's about, who you get to work with and your partners and, having these kind of relationships. I mean, for me, officiating high school basketball has been, obviously almost a lifelong passion, but it's also a place where I've developed and maintained a lot of friendships over the years. And so, going to 3-man, I think helped. That's been a long time now. If it was 2-man officiating, I certainly wouldn't be doing it anymore. So I think it's 3-man. I think it's having a good time. It's having fun, developing relationships with other officials, and quite honestly, with coaches. I think our coaches are great for the most part in Northern Virginia, and I think that helps a lot.
Scott, what's your perspective? I know you've dealt with some health things that you're still working your way through, but what's your perspective on keeping more experienced officials in the game?
There's such a shortage that trickles down because the college levels, especially the lower levels, like the Division threes and JUCOs, are poaching, or not poaching, but they're bringing on officials who may not be as ready. So we may be having some decent younger varsity officials that are now going and working these JUCO games or these Division III games. I mean, when I was working those games, we got paid, 80 or $100, and now they're getting paid $250, $300 for those. And, they're chasing the dream. I mean, we chased the dream for a while. Adam did Division I for a while. I did 13 years Division II. There's a lot that goes into it. And we were talking before we started, but like in the old days, like I would leave work at 1 o'clock, drive 5 hours to do a college game that started at 7 o'clock out in Charleston, West Virginia. I'd get back in the car at 9:30 and I'd pull into the driveway at 3 in the morning. And I did the same. I did it, 3 or 4 nights a week. And so what's happening now is that the Division I level is paying so much higher now that's the goal. We have a number of Cardinal officials who have graduated on to Division I and G League and NBA, WNBA, that you get the taste of that. Adam and I were talking. We have one of our former officials is doing some games in the ACC now, and clears game checks that start with a 3 and have a comma after it. That's pretty enticing. So for these officials to go chase that dream, and it's equitable now, thankfully on the men's side and the women's side, is it we have two different areas where we don't have enough officials that are coming in. We don't have enough officials that we can keep because they're getting pulled up. And then we also have that little sidebar like Adam talked about, when it's just not fun anymore. Somebody has a bad experience. I can just think in the last 2 years, 3 years, especially during COVID, and coming back from COVID, the the interest level of wanting to honestly take the abuse, um, is not of interest anymore. So we've probably lost 20, 25 officials because of that. But I will say, to Adam's point, it's not the coaches. It's not the players and the coaches. I mean, look, everybody has bad apples. So there's some coaches that are not our friends, and we certainly have officials that we would hope that would act in a better light. But at the end of the day, it's not them. It's the parents. It's the lack of support that we get sometimes from some schools that maybe just don't put in some things. You know, we've had some situations where officials were yelled at, chased down the hallway as they left the gym, and there's nobody there to protect the official. Few and far between. But it just takes one of those events for a young official that has 4 kids at home and his wife going, "Why are you doing this?" Or her husband, "Why are you doing this?" For them to say, "You know what? I don't need to do it anymore," and they give it up, and they don't miss it.
I think one of the
Julian,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
No.
there are some national stats that just came out recently. The National Association of Sports Officials did a survey. They did one in 2017, and they just did one in 2023. I was just at a conference where they were presenting some of this stuff. And just to give you a kind of an overview of a highlight of the national stat. So there were almost 36,000 officials responded to this survey. 35,813. The average age of officials across the country, all sports, of these respondents is 57 years old.
Wow.
In 2017, that average age was just a little over 53. So it's trending in the wrong direction. 50% of the respondents at some point in their officiating career, and I'm going to read the words that they use in the survey, felt unsafe or feared for their safety because of behavior by an administrator, coach, player, or spectator. That's a high percentage. Not that they had anything happen, but they felt unsafe or feared for their safety. Almost 12% of those that responded, 11.87%, have been physically assaulted during or after a game. No percent is acceptable, but that's an alarming rate. And then just lastly about sportsmanship, the question, and the survey is a lot more than just this, but the survey asked, is sportsmanship getting worse? 69% of the respondents said yes. And it's interesting to see the level at which that sportsmanship is getting worse. If you combine youth kind of competitive travel along with youth rec and adult rec, the percentage, if you took 100% of those that said it was getting worse, all of those that said it was getting worse, 77% was at that recreational basketball, travel basketball level. And only 19% was at the high school level. At the high school or at any of these levels, the causes, again, from officials, the causes of unsporting behavior, 63% of it comes from parents and fans.
Wow.
25% from coaches, and 9% or 10%, almost 10% from players. What I would suggest, again, this would now becomes anecdotal. Those are survey facts or survey statistics. I won't say facts, survey statistics. I would venture to guess that if you ask coaches where their troubles come from, that at least 63%, and probably significantly higher, come from parents and spectators. So I think we're in the same boat with the coaches, because you know coaches that are getting out and have gotten out because of They just can't deal with some of that stuff anymore and choose not to. They don't get paid. They don't get paid well either at the high school level. So those are just some stats that came out of this national survey that was just done in 23.
Well, Adam, so I've been to, 10, 12 games this year so far, and I haven't seen any technical fouls given. At a game last night, I think the refs did a solid job. There are some obviously calls that they miss. It happens. I didn't feel like people in the stands were overly yelling at them. I thought the mood was pretty good. Do you think part of this is social media? When things happen to referees, it gets an audience now. In the old days, there was urban legend of things happening. Oh,
Right.
like there was a guy who went to get a gun, and I had to leave the gym, years ago when I was doing rec ball back in Charlottesville. That happened to me. But most of these things were urban legend. There's no proof. Now people see the abuse on social media. And also, do you think it's a matter of there are other ways to make the money? So, $40, I don't know what referees make now. But the money that you can make officiating, and you have travel costs, you have uniform costs, other things you have to do. Rather just get another type of part-time job if you want to make money.
Sure. I mean, I think all of those are factors. One of the other things that was mentioned at this conference I was at was people are doing fairly well at recruiting officials. The problem is retaining them. And that way more than half leave during or at the end of their first year for whatever reason. I would suggest that there's probably two main components to why people leave after they start so soon. One is probably the unsporting behavior, or they realize it's not for them. I mean, you tell me any other, and I'll call this a job for now, even though it's not a job, any other job where it's okay for people to yell at you while you're trying to do it, right? A teacher, doctor, lawyer, work at the counter at McDonald's, the library, and it's not acceptable behavior. So I think for some, that's probably a rude awakening. And then I think secondly is there's a need for instant gratification these days. And I don't think it's necessarily generational. I don't think it's based on age. I think it's the times we're in, that when an official starts their officiating career this year, so they start in September, they take our class, and maybe they're fortunate enough to start working some freshman JV ball. They probably think they ought to work the state tournament, if not this year, next year. And that doesn't work that way. And I think there's, when we all started, high school basketball games were played on Tuesdays and Friday nights. It was two-person crews, and it was not uncommon for officials to sit at home on one of those nights because we had more officials than we had games. And that's not the case anymore. And so I think when you get the push and pull of all those things happening, you wind up where we're at, where we've got a shortage, the average age is going up. Trying to keep, as we started this conversation, trying to keep veterans, or as I was called last night by a retired coach who's quite well older than me, called me an old timer. Trying to keep us old timers in the game, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Scott, do you want to come in here?
Well, I was just gonna piggyback up what Adam said. It's also important for the associations to put some things in place. And one of the things that I did when I was in charge of this was just try to make sure nobody slipped through the cracks. We had this great applicant class that people would go to, and we have a great summer training program that you get invited to usually after your third year-ish. Some people are longer. One or two, we can talk about a couple of those, get in earlier and do very well. But what happens between when they finish their applicant year until they get to year 3? And we, as those who are in leadership roles, I'm currently serving as the president at Cardinal. I succeeded Adam. It's really important for us to put things in place that allows us to make sure that they have a chance to grow and have success. I mean, there's camps, they have to sign up for them, they have to do those things. There's certainly some skin in the game for them. But if our associations aren't providing those resources and those mentor programs and the ability to get better, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So we have some responsibility as well. And we've had some transition in Cardinal. I did this for 8 years and then have handed it off to Andre. And there's always, anytime you have change in leadership, there's going to be just a change in philosophy, how you do things. And so it's really important for us to just make sure that regardless of what the program looks like and what the resources are, is that they're still consistent, that they're there. And so that would be one of the other things I think that we have the ability to do. And I would say to the coaches, and I think we talked about this maybe a year or two ago, Julian, is we'd love to hear from former players that are graduating from college and coming home, and a lot of them want to coach again, and the coaches can only have so many assistants. Well, depending on what school it is, but there's so much opportunity, and again, they pay so much higher now for officials that you get the right official that comes in. We can talk about Castine Evans in a minute, but Castine was with us for 3 years, and now she's working Division I in the G League, and she's making checks with commas in them. That's something I never got to do in my years of college. So I think it's one of those things that we can put some things in place too, but we would love to have some coaches help us by telling former players, hey, have you thought about being an official, especially the point guards? I keep trying to go after Daniel Gerke, who played at Madison, because he played that high post and did the backdoor passes that Kevin Roller had him do. And man, that kid could see the court so well. I'd be like, man, that could be a great referee. But he wants to coach, so for now.
Well, Adam mentioned that it's not just a problem of recruiting, it's a matter of retaining, getting folks to buy in. But for example, my son was a soccer player, and I encouraged him at UVA to get into refereeing, as I did. And I was taking soccer, but then he expressed interest in basketball, and I said, yeah, you got to try it. So soccer was easy for him to officiate because he knows the game. He's played the game all his life. Basketball, he never really played much. And by the time he was old enough, I had stopped officiating and playing as well. So anyway, he started to officiate basketball, and he said, Dad, I have no idea what I'm doing. He would text me after the game. It was a disaster, but little by little, he's gotten better at it. And so, so he's home for break, and we've been going to games every night, and all he does is watch the officials. I wish there was a way the kids like him can get right into, a more serious pipeline of folks that are interested, because he's athletic. He doesn't know basketball, but he can learn it, and he really wants to learn. So I wish there was a way we could, bridge that gap, and kids that are interested young, who have good eyes and shape, right away can get into a higher level track to get to where they want to get, to where they want to be.
We have a resource for your son, actually. So we run, Steve Gordon. We run the Steve Gordon basketball officials camp. We have had people come to the camp that have never put a whistle in their mouth, and we were able to teach them on the fly. And again, the expectation level has to meet the coach's understanding of what we're dealing with in some of those cases. But we've had a number of people who've turned out to be really good officials and are working varsity games now, who just came to the camp as their first ever experience before they even took the applicant class, to just get out on the court and referee. And we offer scholarships to especially college intramural officials that have come from rural areas. And we've done this for 7 years now, and we've given away 77 scholarships to our camp in those 7 years. And I think that's a testament to what Steve, and as well as myself and Adam and Dickie V and Gil Mack and Carl Armstrong, some of the guys, Marvin Dawkins, that have been part of this since day one, that we weren't in this for the money. Everything we get put back into the camp, or we give scholarships to those officials in underdeveloped areas, or don't have training programs, so that they can come and learn for free. And I think that's such a important piece. But so remind your son.
Yeah,
we'd love to have him.
And I think you're right, Julian. I think the Steve Gordon camp has tremendous tremendous input and output. But I do think the time of, we're going to have an applicant class, it's going to be in September and October, November. going to be once or twice a week, and you got to show up at wherever it is. That's still good, but we have to figure out other ways to recruit, train, and retain officials. Because the definition of insanity, as we all know, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we have to come up with ways to deal with, today's society of the video, a Zoom call like this. We always talked about how we would go to the Northern Region tournament, the semis and finals, whether it was at the Patriot Center at Robinson. We set out a table. We put out recruiting information, and kids would be excited about it and be, okay, yeah, now this is in March. Our class is in September. Well, you don't hold the interest of a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old for that many months before they get to do something, particularly today. And so I think that's a challenge. But I think it's great. One of the other things I mentioned at this conference was, with college kids, a lot of times it's hard because they're in town for a little while, they're out of town. Then they graduate, they start jobs, they maybe move to a different area, and they don't pick it back up again. And so that's where you lose kids. One of the demographics they identified as a potential, I won't call it a hotbed for recruits, but a place for recruiting is our parents of players who no longer play. They've graduated, and the parents are now looking for something to do because they don't have that fix of basketball anymore because they're not watching their kids play. Because the age, there's a fairly high age of new officials. The average age is, you got new officials into their 40s coming in, and we see a lot of that, Scott. We see a lot of older officials starting. And so that's another potential area to recruit new officials. But it's hard, particularly in an area like ours that's transient, with government jobs and the military. We do get a lot of people moving in and out. It makes it a little bit more difficult. So.
Yeah, I thought of that as well. It's like, I kind of got involved in social media stuff, but I was thinking one way to watch the games that I go to is just to start officiating again. I can be there. So because I was spending all my weekends at soccer games for the last 12 years, and that's gone. So that's why I've had so
now you
much
got free time. So you do a podcast. Now you can officiate. Maybe you can do a podcast while you're officiating.
Oh, you officiate, yeah.
You go with official the officiating camp.
Yeah.
Marvin, put a camera on your chest or something. You can run around and have a mic cooked up.
And would they do that in that 3-on-3 tournament or something?
Yeah.
What's that league where they did that?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, Adam. You brought up a good point though, because I got an offer from a soccer ref to mentor my son. Blah blah blah. The same thing. And then it was weird because as soon as I asked him about we're not doing anything in August. Check back was, and every time that it was a good time for them, my son was then not available. And it's just a matter of how do you pick up on the momentum? He's talking about getting a part-time job in the library and stuff. And deep down, I don't want to discourage that, but deep down inside, I'm like, you can make so much money officiating. Just like, for example, for soccer, at some point you get you get $1 for every minute you're on the field. And if a game was 90 minutes, it's $90. You're just not going to make that kind of money in the library.
No.
And so I keep thinking like, yes, it's good to work, but officiating, it could be really lucrative. And you meet people. Some of the friends that I still have today are friends that I have officials, even intramural officials that I worked with many years ago. The one that was my supervisor in the gyms, Kathleen Mullen, she's a prominent attorney, but we're still friends to this day. And I met her through officiating intramurals many years ago.
Now, I don't mean to, and I know Mike Preston would always yell at me when I talked about a spring class. And part of the issue is we're all volunteer associations, right? And so it's hard to say, we're going to have a training class that goes on 365 days out of the year. It's not a business. And you're asking people to give up their time to do this. So it is hard. And so, I don't think there are any easy solutions. I think having the data of, the statistics that the National Association of Sports Officials has done, I think is helpful. And at the end of the day, it's, we've even gone to, and we've probably talked about this before, games are no longer Tuesday, Fridays. We don't have enough officials to cover. Scott, how many schools are we at now? 50? 52 high schools, boys and girls games that go on, freshman, JV, varsity on Tuesday. We don't have enough officials to do that, or we don't
It's
have
great
enough
for
available
fans.
officials, right?
It's great for fans. I can catch a game every night of the week now. It used
Right,
to be
right.
you had to choose.
And then it doesn't help. I mean, you do it because you love it, but I did 4 games in 3 days last week.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, but that, for somebody at my age, that doesn't help on the back end of your career, right?
Yeah.
Knock wood, I'm still able to get up and down the court. I'm sure there are people wish that I would retire, but you know, that's a lot. It used to be you did 2 games a week.
Yeah.
We'd love to get more of these college grad, like, I brought up Castine's name earlier. Castine joined us in 2017, 2018. We invited her to our summer evaluation program, and after the first year, we made her varsity. Now, she's a little different. She was a 4-year starter and 4-year captain at the University of Kentucky. She actually hit the three-pointer that sent Ella Deladon and her Delaware Blue Hens home in the tournament that last year. She comes from a different background, a quick learner. She's now working in the G League and does probably 25, 30 Division I games a year. Those are few and far between, but she's, going to make, I don't want to guess, but she's going to make a decent amount of money and doing it. All those games have commas in them. So if she's doing 50 of them, you can kind of get an idea of the type of side income that she's going to have outside of her professional job. So, but high school officials now, high school varsity pays $100 a game.
Hmm.
Freshman and JV, you could do a freshman JV doubleheader and come out with $160, for working, 3 hours of your time. So the money is available. I would say that the schools understand the importance of it, because it's not just working at the game. You got to drive there, and Julian, from where you live, I don't know how long it would take you to get out to Loudoun County.
I
But
just
you have
moved
to do
there,
a,
so I could walk.
oh, okay. Okay, so then we'll send you to a game at Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
Oh yeah.
it's such a wide area, and everybody knows about the traffic and the, the cost of living in this area. So, but anyway, I don't want to digress too much, but I just think that there's opportunities out there for the right person who wants to get involved.
She's a great name. I forgot her name. What's the referee's name that's going to G League?
Casting those.
So last year I saw her work and she was fantastic. I was at a game and it was just a nasty game where you had elbows, you had players that behaving badly, and she was a star. And I remember I emailed you, Scott, and I'm like, this woman was a really good rep. Who is this? And so it's just amazing that it's nice to see talent get recognized, because I saw this game and I thought she was a star from the moment I saw her. I said, man, that woman can referee some basketball.
She
So
she works really hard. Now the other thing is we also have some pretty good relationships with people that like to give back. Um, One of my closest friends is NBA crew chief Scott Foster. Obviously, not everybody loves him, uh, but he is the best teacher and best video clinician, best with the rules. And she has been under his wing and also under Eric Lewis's wing. Eric recently retired. His wife's the head coach at George Mason, Vanessa. And so he's now in charge of the MEAC and assigning the men's officials to the MEAC. So Eric has his own little training league that he does for officials that want to move up, that are advanced. And she's been studying under him. I mean, she's really, she's done very well. And the only thing that's going to prevent her from getting to where she wants to get to is her. But she's got such a good head on her shoulders, and man, I
Let's
just root for that.
I want to reiterate, she is by far the exception to the rule,
Yeah.
Don't
right?
come here expecting
That's
to be in the G League and the NCAA Final Four the second year.
Yeah, or
Exactly.
any year, or any year. Like, it's a nice goal to have,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you gotta work your games. I mean, the only way to get better at officiating is to work games. Same thing as playing. You don't get better by not playing. You don't get better by not officiating. And when we all started, we worked, rec games. We worked those men's adult league games, which, can be like youth games depending upon how they act. You gotta cut your teeth. And I do think that there's a certain amount of folks that aren't willing to put that effort in. And this is not an avocation that you can succeed in if you're not willing to put the effort
Yeah.
in.
Effort, talent. I want to get to the interview I did with a college ref last week who played at Robinson. I coach him. It shows you the amount of work it takes to get to Division One. But I did want to follow up. Is there any talk about this year having to go to 2-man at any point this year, or so far we'll be able to get through with 3-man?
So this year, we have in our contracts the ability to uh, assign 2-person if we need to cover that, and we've had to do that in the last couple of years just because some schools would not come off their Friday night or Tuesday night, and but when we do it, it's that way for everybody. We don't say, well, the boys get all 3-person and the girls get 2, or Patriot gets 3-person and the Arlington schools get 2. It doesn't work that way. So this year, I want to give kudos to our scholastic commissioner, Doug DeVault, his team, Don Gatz and Marvin Dawkins. They've just been doing amazing work. And I give a lot of kudos to our officials. A lot of our officials have gone above and beyond. This first 2 weeks of the season, when we had all these tip-off tournaments, we would have officials that would go work the South Lakes tournament and then hit Woodson at night, or they would be at St. Stephen's, St. Agnes for a 1 o'clock tip for the Sleepy Thompson tournament, and then turn around and be at Fairfax, or and so we have officials that are doing a lot of extra work, and that's really important for us because we want to cover all the games, 3-person. We want to cover all the games without having to go to 2. But I would say this year, knock on wood, obviously we haven't had any weather yet either, although I just jinxed us. We're probably going to have 3-person for everything as it sits right now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I also want to just go back to say thanks to the schools though, because we understand why they want Friday night.
Yeah.
It's a big gate that I mean, football is their big moneymaker, but some of these schools rely on the gate they get from high school basketball as well. And so for them to move to a Thursday night or a Saturday night, we understand that that's not always the easiest thing for them to do. It requires administrators, it requires athletic trainers to work extra, days or nights that they weren't planning on. But we kind of have to do this together in order for it to be successful.
yeah. Well, I wanted to get a little bit into some, and this is the most important stuff, because if we don't have refs, we don't have games, and the work you guys do to make this go forward is great and amazing. But I did want to talk a little bit about some of the actual officiating and some of the rule changes that have been going on. And before we get to a rule change, when I talked to my son about officiating, the hardest thing I have to describe to him is traveling these days. When I refereed last in 2005, and Adam and I refereed quite often together, it was easy to know what a travel was. We didn't always get them right, but we miss calls like we miss any other call. But we knew what a travel was, and everyone did. But nowadays, traveling has gotten so ridiculous. I mean, you hear the snickers in the audience for legitimate moves that aren't travels by doctrine, and then sometimes things that seem kind of minor and not even mean a lot to a play are travels. It's very difficult for me to describe to him what a travel is. when I talked to Josh Burton, the guy, the Division I ref who played at Robinson, he had a really good definition of what it was. But basically, what he recommended us to do is you really have to focus on the obvious and really focus on the obvious. And he tried to tell us, he gave us a framework for what that is. But anyway, you guys, do you agree that traveling is a very tough thing to call these days? And it's I'm not saying it's a gray area, but it's very difficult for officials, coaches, players, and fans to even know what traveling is these days.
I don't think it's tough. I think it's the hardest call in basketball. For me personally, I think it's the hardest call in basketball because the kids are so fast. And my belief, and I'm setting myself up here for any coach that watches this. If I call a travel and I can't answer which one was the pivot foot, then how do I call a travel? Unless the kid falls to the ground or takes the ball and runs 10 yards with it. And I think that's hard. And I was taught, and you probably were too, Julian, and you too, I know Scott was, that you're better in the flow of a game. You're better off missing a travel that's there than calling one that's not, because the differential in point could be greater by calling one that's not there. And so, I think the block charge is relatively easy if you do what we're supposed to do, which is referee the defense. I think traveling is the toughest call in basketball. I agree with you. I agree with your son. And when you figure it out, please let me know.
Yeah, that could be especially.
That's the key thing for people that that have never officiated. When you first take the class, and Julian, you remember this from years ago, you're taught to referee the defense. Mm-hmm. And so, because the defender is the one that can cause the contact or receive the contact, and if you're refereeing the defense, you know if they've gotten legal guarding position, have maintained it, have taken the contact to the chest, or they've used their hands illegally. But you're paying so much attention to the hands, you're missing the feet. And so we now get in trouble because, well, it looked weird. So, gosh, I had a long conversation with Carlos Poindexter years ago. He had a kid, Gaither was his name, I forget his first name, that had this great Euro step. And man, we would screw that up. We would call that a travel every time. Billy Gibson, who, by the way, I don't know why he gets a bad rap. I love refereeing Billy Gibson's games. But Billy always talked about how we as officials, him and Fred, were always on me about, why don't you guys teach the officials about how the girls do the step through, where they pivot and then they're allowed to step through with their non-pivot foot to jump off it, but we always call that a travel. And I said, you're absolutely right.
The up and under, it was called tremendously horrible in girls basketball.
Still is. And I actually was looking at one of my huddle training tapes this morning on traveling that I was going to send to a young official who has a hard time with the jump stop, just to show this official why it's a travel. I almost feel like getting the old Sherman Douglas video clips out back in the day for those that remember. Sherman always did that jump stop at the foul line and took that extra step, especially when he was at spin guard, and nobody ever called it. But so we can show them video, which has been a great help, being able to do clips. And I'm doing one right now on illegal screens because I do some clinics for IBO International and some other things. And there's some illegal screen clips on coverage. And then I have one right now that I'm actually was looking at right before we started, when I was working with Gil, that we totally missed it. It was in Gil's area, but Gil couldn't watch it because he had an active matchup with the ball. So, but getting back to the point, when you're taught this way, it's really hard to understand that, why are we missing that play? There's also the people that don't understand, if you're the lead official, that's the official under the basket, and you have a post play where you have the ball on the offensive player's hand, and he's in an active matchup, meaning there's close defense. The referee that's in that position and lead is looking basically from shoulders to knees. They're refereeing the defense. But the trail official, the one, especially in 3-person, who's out by the division line, they're there to help with feet and anything above the shoulders. That's just advanced teaching that we do that not everybody understands. And So if the lead official misses a travel call, he gets yelled at, but really it was the trail that probably missed that play.
Hmm.
So we
Or like
try
you
to
said,
use
Julian, it
video.
wasn't a travel and people just yelling anyway.
That's right. We certainly, again, the whole, well, it looked goofy. Um, there's this old saying, if you think it's a travel, it's not, and if you know it's a travel, it is. And I saw the clip that you sent me about what Josh had talked about what they're being taught, and they're absolutely right. That it's one of those that you have to get the ones that everybody knows, and if you're not sure, you stay away from it.
Yeah. Is it one of those things where the NBA, college, and high school rules are they the same on travel? Because that makes it easy. So when people are watching TV, and they want to use their knowledge, these are folks in the stands, the people that are part of those percentages that Adam talked about that are making it tough on officials. Are they seeing the same travel calls at different levels, or is it doctrinally different in college, pro college, and high school?
The NBA has what's called a zero step. So the first step that they take doesn't count. That's part of the NBA rule. It's been that way for years. So when you see like Giannis get the ball just inside the division line or the midcourt line, take one dribble and dunk it, people are going, "What? How did that happen?" He's got such a long stride, though. His zero step is once he gathers it, that first step that they take, they get. We don't get that in high school or college. So that's a big difference. That the key thing for us is we just have to know if it's an active matchup, we referee the defense. If it's a passive matchup, meaning that the defender's not right on them and there's space, then we can widen out our angle to be able to pick up the pivot foot. And if the ball's released before the pivot foot's lifted or not, that's one. Um, we can also, the step up and under, the jump stop with the step, those things come with experience. Like what Adam talked about earlier, refereeing games and seeing plays is your most important training element. Think about when, especially for the coaches, you have a kid that overplays on defense and gets beat like a drum on the back door cut over and over again. Don't play Madison because they'll run that play. But that's an opportunity for the coaches to be able to teach the players of how not to get beat on that backdoor cut. They want to overplay the pass, but they get beat like a drum on the backdoor cut. And it's just, it drives a coach nuts. Same thing happens with us when we go through these summer training programs, and we've just taught them the importance of being able to pick up the active and passive matchups when the screener comes up. Who's got the screener and who's got the other matchups, and there's so much that goes into it when you get to advanced officiating, kind of like advanced coaching at the higher level, that you could get lost in the weeds. And we really want to stick with the basic fundamentals first, and then we can grow from there. Um, I think it's one of those things that you're also dealing with. These are not 365-day, except for Gil Mack, referees.
I thought he was
Everybody's got a
366.
he is this year. Everybody's got another job. I'm a pastor at a church. That the last thing that I'm thinking about most of the time is whether or not we got that travel right in a call in a game. So a lot of the understanding also comes from that we have people that are accountants, that are doctors, that are pastors, that are doing all kinds of different things, and they're giving back to the game that they love, or they're doing it to make extra money for vacation, or they're doing it to stay in shape, or whatever the mix is. But we need them. Every one of those guys and gals is so important for us to be able to do what we need to do.
Scott, you mentioned Giannis in one dribble and dunk. When I was officiating near the end of my time is when one of the heydays of Iverson, and they were really trying to crack down on the carries, the way he used to carry the ball, and that was a point of emphasis that trickled down to high school as we were trying to get that out of the game. One thing I noticed now is players are carrying. Giannis will carry the ball en route to that one dribble or two dribble, and he can when he does that. That's like 20 feet. Is that called any differently at the high school level than it is at the pro level? And also, has that changed over the last 15 years, the way that we call carries?
So I've been working with the NBA I think you knew that. I've worked with the NBA and referee operations for the last 4 years, and before I got into my own full-time church, and so I just decided to step away. But there's such advanced training on that specific type of play, and it's all about when the ball comes to rest. It's taught the same way. The difference is Giannis is 7 feet tall and runs like a gazelle, and sometimes you just can't pick it up. You mentioned I refereed Allen's first game when he came to when he got his clemency, first game at Georgetown. I think Adam, you were probably there. Um, it it was such a different speed that he played with.
Mhm.
And then doing some of the Georgetown scrimmages, and I refereed Sebastian Telfair, his cousin. No, that was Stefan Marbury's cousin.
Mhm.
They just had a different gear, and to try to be able to keep up with them, what it did is it caused you to miss the plays that they probably got bumped on, got hand checked, got fouled, got
Mhm.
prevented. Their rhythm, speed, quickness, and balance got knocked off course by a forearm to try to keep up with them. The back of the hand on the inside of the hip as they're driving past them, but you're putting that out there. It became such an issue that I know Coach Thompson, may he rest in peace, that was a big thing for him because he knew nobody could guard Bubba Chuck. It was just Allen was just a different breed.
Adam Jones, but is it a point of enforcement? Is it something? It seems like players are allowed to do more with the ball than they were 15, 20 years ago. Maybe,
I think a lot of kids. I think almost every kid palms the ball when they
yeah.
dribble. I really do. We were actually talking about this one of my crews recently. I almost think it's become somewhat like contact, where it's
Exactly.
become an advantage disadvantage play,
Exactly right.
right? And it's kind of the way I guess I judge it now, right? So for those that haven't officiated, I mean, there's a philosophy. It's called the Tower philosophy by a guy named John Tower, right? I think his name was John. You know,
Oswald.
Oswald. Well, I'm going to call him John. It's a much better first name. Um,
No problem.
oh, John Tower was the wasn't he a politician? Maybe. Anyway,
Yeah, he was the guy
so
who got in trouble. Go ahead.
right. So good old Oswald, not Lee Harvey, but Oswald Tower came up with the philosophy was the following: it's a contact sport, and not all contact is a foul. That as an official, we have to judge three things fairly quickly. Because of the contact, did somebody gain an advantage? Because of the contact, was somebody put at a disadvantage? Or is this going to lead to rough play? And so if you could answer yes to any one of those three questions, you got to put air in the whistle and call a foul. I kind of think palming has come the same way. The kid's dribbling the ball up the court and there's no pressure, or maybe even if there is pressure, but he doesn't beat his man and he's kind of turning over a little bit, you kind of look the other way. I hate to say it. Now, if he does that little hesitation, causes the defense to be put at a disadvantage, and now you call it. I feel like that's the way it's getting to, because I don't know if it's the way it's being taught, or kids can be faster. I was never a good dribbler to begin with. I probably wouldn't be any better if I could palm the ball. I was a 5'10" post player, and there's not a lot of need for that. You know, I think that's falls into the category of the traveling. It's harder to call, and I think we tend to call it less for whatever it's worth. One thing I do want to share, going back to what Scott was talking about a minute or two ago, is that one of the things I think that's important, whether you're a player, an official, or a coach, but I think coaches and players do this, particularly at the high school level. I'm not sure all referees do this. Is the post game analysis? Is you, in order to get better at anything, I don't care what it is in life, I think two very important traits are self-awareness and reflection, and the ability to, after a game, to know what didn't go well, why it didn't go well, and how can we avoid this in the future, or what went well and why did it go well. You need to know that to get better. I'd equate it to me going to the range for golf. I can go to the range and hit 100 balls. Some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. The problem is I don't know why. And so I can go bang balls all day at the golf driving range, but I'm not going to get any better because I don't know why my shots go one way or the other. I think the same thing is true in basketball. You've got to know, why did I just have a good game? Why didn't I have a good game? Why did I miss that call? Why didn't I see that call? Why didn't we get that call right? and there can be multiple reasons. And I don't know that all officials put the time in to think about that. And I think that's imperative upon us to make that happen more within the application of officiating.
That's where game video comes in to help. We get those game videos from coaches. It's so important, for development of officials.
Yeah. It's interesting. One thing that Josh talked about is, and I didn't realize this happened because we're talking about how much money officials make at the college level. He watches hours and hours of video of each team before they play. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, I can see watching video of yourself and calls that you make and whether you got them right or not. But before he goes referee Harvard versus Yale, he's going to watch hours and hours of video of both teams. And I'm like, wow, that's really having to know a lot about a game you official. I didn't realize that officials, the preparation went to those kind of levels.
We actually have I'll just say we have some officials, especially during state playoff time, that request game videos of teams that aren't in our area.
Mhm.
So we might get a team from the beach versus a team from Richmond. We send a crew to somewhere. We have officials that will ask for those game videos because they just want to see the tendencies.
Yeah.
Do they press? Are they man to man? Are they doing zone press? Are they trapping principles? Who's coming off the bench? What are they doing a backdoor cut type of offense with a high post? Are they doing screening? Are they screening away? What are some of the key tendencies? And so what it does is it helps the officials, if nothing else, be prepared. You walk into a game for the first time. Adam and we have a really funny story. We worked a game together. It was George Mason before they became Meridian. And they played a team called Stewart's Draft that Adam called Budweiser. And we didn't know what we were getting into. And so it was him and myself and one other official. And it was a team that ran that Grinnell type offense, the stuff that Metris was running at Lake Braddock for a few years, subbing 5 in, 5 out, shooting within the first 10 seconds. And we were gassed, especially me. And I will tell you, there was a play. There was a point in the fourth quarter where I started cramping. There's like 4.5 minutes to go, and Adam came to switch with me, and I said, I got to stay in the C, which is the center, because it's the one that's the least physically taxing. You don't have to do the full sprints to the baseline on steals and things like that. You can just run from foul line to foul line. And he's like, "What's up?" And I go, I'm cramping." And he's like, "Okay, got it." So he went and told our partner. Now, when you find this out, the key thing is you don't rotate, because you don't want to take the official that's cramping or have an issue with an injury or something out of that space, because it puts them at higher risk. So Adam went and told our partner, and he rotated like the next 5 times down the court. And I'm like, what the? Adam's just over there dying laughing. But if we had known that that's what they were going to do, I don't know if it would have changed from a hydration standpoint or whatever, but we would have at least known what we were getting into. And so I say that because a lot of times our officials, they know the schools roughly, they know the teams, they show up. But our state officials, that they do have an interest. We have one official we kind of make fun of. I won't mention him by name, but he likes to give these pregame reports with who the higher scorer is, what their average games were. I'm appreciative of it because I know that he cares.
Yeah.
Adam really lets him have it.
Yeah, so I'm old school. I'm an old timer. We established that, at the beginning of this. What I like to do, and I'll do this in a game if it's close at the end, timeout. The only thing I want to know, I'll go to a coach and I'll ask, "Where's the play going?" Because
We have video of that.
if you can tell me where it's going, then I know where to look. I'm not going to share it with the other team, but can you tell me where your play is designed to go?
That's interesting.
And when they do that, it can be very helpful.
Yeah. You have to.
Adam had a great example of that was years ago. Oakton had Braden Johnson, the the older of the brothers, not Garrett, but Braden. Great shooter. They were playing Chantilly, I think. There was a play with like 1.5 on the clock or something. They had to go 84 feet. And Adam walked over and said, basically asked Brooksy that, said, where's Brooksy, where's the play going? And he said we're gonna have a pass put right over here, kind of like that old Bryce Drew play. And because Adam asked and knew it was coming, he was able to see the kid's foot on the line.
Yeah.
And they went to overtime instead of winning in regulation. And we actually have it on video. We've shown it as training as to why it's important to be communicative on the court. It's just, I wish it would just become second nature for a lot of people, but it doesn't. The situational awareness that some of our officials have, like Adam, Dickie V, Gil, I would put myself in that role. Just like, what you have to get ready for.
Yeah, I think Adam has the kind of personality, though. He can put something like that over. There's some personalities I could see that going terribly, terribly wrong, just because I don't know, they're not trusted, or Adam's the kind of guy you would tell things to. So I can see that might not working for everybody.
For clarity, I've never been a bartender. So I don't have that. No, I do think that relationships and communication are important, particularly in basketball officiating. I mean, I always use the word, like the old Budweiser commercials were about drinkability. We're about believability. They have to believe what we're selling. And that becomes a trust factor, right? Again, we're not going to get all the calls right. It's never going to happen. But they have to believe that you're calling what you're seeing, that you're trustworthy. They know they're going to get a fair game. And by and large, and I tell this to officials all the time, you can get the call correct. And from the time you put air in the whistle to the time you go to the table, nobody believes you. And vice versa. You can get a bang bang play call wrong. And by the time you put air in the whistle, the time you go to the table, they believe you.
Yeah.
And so it is about communication and relationships and how you deal with players, and how you deal with coaches. And there are different styles to that, different personalities, but there are ways to do it that I think can really make the game better, depending upon your style and your personality. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but it has to be done. You've coached, Julian, when you're trying to communicate with an official, the worst thing they can do to you is ignore you.
Yeah.
Right? Just ignore you. That's the worst thing that can happen. They don't have to know what to say, but you just nodded your head at me. I know you heard what I said. You don't have to say anything. You can do it with a look, with a nod. I hear you, coach. I'll take a look at you. You don't have to be a smart ass like me or give a long explanation. But they're not. There's no coach that's expecting you to change your call.
Yeah.
They don't expect that, right? I've had coaches say to me, "Hey, Adam, I'm sorry, but I got to yell at you right now because my players need to know I'm defending them and the fans are getting on my butt a little bit. So I'm going to yell at you. It's not personal." I'm like, "Okay, go ahead and yell."
Yeah.
It's a hard job. They have a hard job. Their job's harder than ours. I said this to coaches all the time. We're only here for 2 hours. You're with the kids all day long, and forget the parent. They got a much harder job than we do.
Yeah, you're talking about believability. Yesterday, a couple of games. I was, again, talking about my son, because this enables me to break down officiating. The officials might not have got the type of foul right, so maybe it was a block, maybe he called push, maybe it was a over the back, or a reach, and he called push, whatever. And I said, Chandler, put your arm up, go 2 shots, or point to the spot. If you're going to get the type of foul wrong, you're going to hurt your believability. So just put your hand up, point to the spot, put your hand up, point to 2 shots, and leave it at that. Don't get into the demonstrating what type of foul it was, because that's going to bring on fire that you don't even need.
Agreed. You're telling a story, and they just saw what happened. So if a kid gets pushed into the wall, and you call he got hit across the arms, they're going to start to not believe you. You're right. And you don't have to come out yelling 2 shots when everybody in the gym plus the people in the parking lot know the kid was shooting.
Yeah.
Right. So, I do think that's part of it as well. I mean, I hope Mike Preston's not listening. Yes, you do need to know the rules. And I usually follow it up with him is I need to, so that I can know which ones I'm not going to enforce that night, which is not true, but I like to bust Mike's chops about that. But there is no better teacher of the rules, and interpreter of the rules than Mike. He's done a tremendous job for us over the years. He stepped away from doing it. Honestly, he's done it for so long. But that you got to know the rules in order to officiate. But then you need to be able to know the kind of the spirit and intent of the rules as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as Josh said, when he's being evaluated in the college level, and every year 20% or so go down, and it's very competitive. He says you might get something wrong, but you better not get a rule wrong. If you get a rule wrong, you're in trouble. If you get your judgment wrong, those are gonna add up, and you may get a certain percentage right, percentage wrong. But you can't miss any of the rules. I wanted to ask about another situation that didn't happen a lot when I officiated. When I officiated, we didn't have a lot of on-ball screening. That was not a thing. We kept spacing was more important. You screened off the ball to get a player open, but you didn't come and screen to the ball very much. The game has changed a lot since then. I probably caught less than 10 off the ball fouls and all screen fouls in all the years I officiated. It just didn't happen that much. Now you'll see 2 or 3 calls a day, a game on the ball screens. Is that a difficult thing to teach young officials or inexperienced officials?
Yes, it's difficult to teach because they're coming from two-person mechanics where they're more focused on the ball than when they get into three-person. The best way to know how to referee off ball is to find the ball first. But what happens is they're used to looking. That's why there's some teaching things that we know when an official misses a rotation is because they were ball watching. And so ball watching is a very real thing for officials that are new, that are transitioning to a higher level. We see it when officials go from non-varsity to varsity level. So yes, it's difficult. However, the importance of being able to show them, again, this is why video is so important. I have like 4 or 5 different training videos on screening alone, and we can just talk about why it's important for it's usually the center because the trail and the lead would be on the side of the ball, assuming that we had a proper rotation. The center really needs to referee aggressively on anything backside screens, screeners running up. Are their feet shoulder width apart? Are they keeping their arms or not chicken winging out? That's what we see a lot of when they get clipped. If it's a blind screen, is there one normal step back allowed? There's so many different factors that go into the screening. So yes, it's difficult to teach, but it's something that we have to have because if you miss one of those and somebody gets creamed on a screen, it can be bad. Adam had a play a few years ago out in Loudoun County where a kid got creamed on a screen, but Adam was right on it. The kid's teammates just didn't yell out that there was a screen coming. And the reaction was that Adam missed it, but Adam, you can see him on the video standing right there going, I this screen. So
I mean, screens are designed to knock people on their asses, unfortunately, at times, right? I mean, I think there's 2 things with the screening. Number one, I think that's probably why I miss travels on the ball when I have the balls, because I'm also looking off the ball for those screens that are coming up on ball now. And so I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to the feet. Guilty as charged. And I think secondly, you hear a lot from the stands. It's a moving screen. It's a moving screen. And it very well be moving, but if there's no contact, it's not illegal. Kid can move all he wants, but if there's no contact, there's nothing to call. There's no violation of a moving screen, and we can't call a foul unless there's contact. And again, it's got to be an advantage-disadvantage contact situation, or is this going to lead to rough play? And so I think those are challenges in screening principles as well.
Yeah. Guys, I did want to get, I'm taking a lot of your time here. I did want to get quickly to the rule change in terms of foul. So nowadays, the high schools have adopted what's been going on, I think, in women's college basketball, I believe, where it's there's no more one-on-one, and after the fifth foul, on the fifth foul of each quarter, you now shoot 2 shots. How has it worked out from your perspective? I have noticed, and I would be interested in you guys' comments on this. I feel I've seen more game management fouls, and that's kind of hard for people to really describe what a game management foul is. But because we're not in the one-on-ones, as a lot of fouls aren't going to be shooting fouls late in the quarter. I see officials using game management fouls more than I've seen it in the past, and I don't know if we can describe what that really means to people who don't officiate. But anyway, I want to get your guys' thoughts on how that's working out from your perspective.
So I don't like it. I love it.
Yeah.
I think I think it's helped speed up the play of not the pace of the game, but the game is sped up because it goes quicker. Because we're not shooting 1-on-1s and then 2s in the half. I think most of my games feel like they've gone quicker than they have in the past. And there are many games where we don't even get to 2 free throws in the quarters, and obviously the fouls wipe off at the end of each quarter, so you go back to 0. So I like it.
I also like it. I will say that it gives the teams an opportunity to reset. There are so many times, especially early in the year or right after they come back from the holiday break, that you'll be shooting 1-on-1 at the end of the first quarter, which means the whole second quarter you're shooting 1-on-1 and double bonus. And it slows the game down. It just makes it difficult. Whereas when you get a chance to reset the fouls, it just makes it so much better from a flow perspective. It also, I think, frees up, and I'm not a coach, but I would think it would free up the coach to also get his or her players to reset and allow them to understand that, okay, we're not shooting bonus now. We still have player fouls, but we need to do that. As far as your comment about game management plays, or maybe what also could be flow call type of plays, I could see that there might be an increase in that, but I think the games are probably individualized as themselves. For me, game flow calls are something like if the fouls are 4-0,
Mhm.
right? We love when coaches tell us, "Hey, by the way, fouls are 4-0." I didn't know that. Thanks.
Yeah, I can't read the scoreboard. Appreciate the
But
help.
I will tell you that in my mind and in my communication with my crew is, hey, listen, I don't have a problem with the 4 fouls we've called. And as long as I can speak to every one of those, I don't have a problem with it. But we better not miss one on the other side. It also doesn't mean that I better go find one. It's not about that. It's about we want to be consistent in what we're calling. One team might be playing, trapping principles with 94 feet man to man, and the other one's packed in a 2-3 zone. I mean, we don't know what the responsibilities of the teams are. So I'm not just going to go hang a foul because the fouls are 4-0. But what I am going to make sure is that my antenna is up a little higher to make sure that if a player gets knocked off balance on a play, that make sure that we adjudicate that just like we did on the other end. As far as the game management side of things go, that's more in line with when we see rough play escalating. We'll tighten up. At least for those of us that are veterans, we can sense when that's happening. You'll see us, call things a little more frequently to try to get the kids to settle in. And I know I've done it. I know others have done it. I don't want to speak for Adam, but there have been times where we've seen a kid come off the bench that's just wild and picks up 2 quick fouls right away. And, you almost want to walk by. I mean, I had a conversation with Andrew Duggan back when he was coaching, and I said, you might want to get this kid out of the game because he's he's a moving screen wherever he goes. and 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 then the kid had picked up a
Moving
third
screen
foul
or an
by
illegal
accident.
screen?
Both.
Sorry, Mike Preston.
Yeah.
He picked up a third foul right away, and then waved off my partner, Carl Armstrong, probably the wrong person to wave off. Now he picks up his fourth with that technical foul. And I looked over and Andrew's like, "You told me, I get it." So I think communications with the coaches and some of those flow or game management things will help as well. But
And I think the other place where to stay on the game management piece is in a blowout.
Yeah.
You're in late in the second half, and really we're there just to make sure the peace is kept.
Yep.
And so we're trying to make sure that nothing bad happens, that the kids don't get frustrated, don't do anything that they're going to regret where they can't play in their next game. And so I think that's where game management also comes into play.
Yeah.
Time and score matter in what you call and what you don't call. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I believe that's untrue. Time and score matter.
And we both had situations. I mean, Adam, you can feel free to share if you want, but like we've had a situation where a kid might have been acting out of character, and just from experience, instead of breaking bad on them and giving them a technical foul, maybe walk over to the coach and say, you might want to settle him down before he hurts you. Or, hey, coach, this is probably a good time to have him sit for a uniform issue. What's the uniform issue? The uniform issue is he's about to get a technical foul. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, coaches appreciate that.
Yeah.
They do. I had a game recently where it was a blowout. And at the beginning of the fourth quarter, a young man had something to say to me before we put the ball in play. And I gave him a chance to walk it back. And it was a conversation, kind of like we're having right now. Nobody's yelling at each other. No arms are flailing. And I gave him a chance to walk it back by asking him, I said, "You're joking, right?" And he's like, "No." And he told me again what he told me. I said, "Okay, can you come with me, please?" And I walked him over to his coach. And they're losing by 20 or 25. Now, I had every right in the world to give the kid a technical foul for what he said.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to help the game. 25-point game. I'm going to look like a jerk because I'm having a conversation with the kid and then I whack him. Right? There's no good that comes of it. So I just walked over to the coach and I said, "You're going to have to take him out. He's got blood on his uniform." And he said, "Okay, where's the blood?" And we walked. I said, "There is no." I said, "There is no blood." I said, "But let me tell you what he said."
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a chance to take care of it. Now, if you choose not to take care of it, then I have to, and that's fine. But I'm going to give you that opportunity first. He said, "Thank you." And he took the kid out. And I don't think he played the kid for the rest of the game. But that's a game management piece, right? A technical foul in that situation was not going to help the game, right? That's the other thing I would for you to tell your son. Before he calls a technical, he needs to think, will this help the game?
Yeah.
Right? So, and I mean that in relation to how we're treated. When two players are yawing at each other, something, there's no, will this help the game? It's going to help the game. You got to get the kids to stop doing that to each other. But it's when they're talking to us or reacting to us, I think that's when we really have to impart a lot of good judgment in whether or not we're going to put air in the whistle for technical foul.
I think generally coaches understand game management like officials do, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish. It's interesting, though. There was an incredible, mythical, legendary high school football team in the area, Freedom, this year that won its second state championship. And they beat everyone, every game they played, they're up 65-0 in the second half. Well, their fans, their parents are always complaining on social media that the referees call all the fouls on them and on the other team. And sometimes I'm like, as a basketball official, I've never officiated football in my life, but you just don't want to miss fouls on a team when they're up 65-0. And the referees are just making sure they enforce everything just to keep the peace. But, sometimes parents and fans, they don't understand what the officials are trying to accomplish in those situations. Like, why don't you call the fouls? So
that's why there are 64% of the unsporting behavior problems.
Right.
Yeah,
they don't understand the game.
Yeah.
And they only see, and this is obviously not a overgeneralization because it applies to 63% of the population. they see the game in a lens of either real myopic of their kid or just their team.
Yeah.
They don't sit right. I forget what coach said it years and years and years ago. It was a college coach. Said the problem with officials is they don't care who wins and loses.
Yeah.
Everybody else in the gym cares who wins and loses.
Yeah.
And that's go back to the beginning. That's the challenge of what all officials do in all sports.
Yeah.
Is what we're kind of like we're the fourth branch of government, right? What do they call the press? That's kind of what we are.
The fourth
Estate.
Yeah.
So the fourth estate, right? We're there to keep it as fair as we possibly can within the rules. And a lot of judgment comes into play. Sometimes good judgment, sometimes poor judgment. Guilty is charged, but always with good intent. It's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, in all the years I've been officiating, have I ever been involved in a game where I thought an official was either purposefully doing something or had an agenda or a vendetta? And I confidently said, no, never. Never. Did officials, including myself, make bad calls? Hell yeah, we do. We make bad calls. In the same way coaches put in bad plays and shooters miss shots and they make turnovers. Yes, we make bad plays. But I don't know of a player who's intentionally turned the ball over or intentionally missed a shot unless it was a free throw and they were told to miss it to get the rebound. And I don't know any official that I've ever worked with who's intentionally missed a play.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah, it's a cynical world these days. I mean, we want to believe that everyone has an agenda.
We do have an agenda. We don't care who wins or loses, but we don't want overtime because we don't get paid extra.
Exactly. We don't want overtime. That's that's clear. But
they had four overtimes last night. Woodson Westpo.
Yeah.
Did you say 4 overtimes?
Yeah, Woodson Westpo went 4 overtimes last night. So I will also say that, and not everybody can do this, but I think coaches appreciate communication, like the right level of communication, like not overbearing or something. But I had a play a number of years ago where I called a foul on one of David Houston's kids over at Westpo, and he said, Scott, I'm not sure that you got the right player on that. And I looked at him and I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, I think the other kid, my other kid fouled him, reached in the cookie jar. I think you just put number 3 on my big kid. And I said, you know what? Hold on a second. And I went over and I asked my partner, and I went over to my partner and I said, do you like chicken Parmesan? And they were like, yeah. And I go, perfect, thanks. I went and put the foul on the other kid because I played the play back in my mind and I knew he was right, because there's this old teaching thing. If a player slaps down on the ball, if he hits the ball goes down. But if he hits the arm, the ball goes up. It's just a very easy principle. The player I called the foul on had his hands up. So why did the ball go up? Somebody had to do that. And so it just took me a second to register, but I went back there. I said, you know what, you were right, and I'm sorry. And I've gone to a coach and said, hey, I think I missed that one. Now I can't go back the next play and say, I missed that one too. Coach, I'm having a bad quarter. I don't know what happened today. Coach,
I think I missed that one too.
And, because after a while, I mean, Morgan Wooten told me many, many, many years ago when I told him that, he looked at me and he said, Scott, it's okay that you missed one, but don't miss 2.
Exactly. We get the next one right, please.
So anyway, I do think coaches appreciate just being human and having the conversation.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I can still fix it.
Yeah.
Adam calls it him.
Yeah. To your point, though, it's a two-way street. So Coach Houston, and there's many of them, but Coach Houston is an example of a coach who, when he has something to say, we're going to listen, because his reputation is a really good one, because of the way he's conducted himself over the many years. And there's a few coaches that probably have the opposite, but not many. But yeah, if a coach is up on every single play, and commenting constantly. It typically doesn't bother me. And I may or may not address it and say, you know, I know I'm bad, but I can't be bad on every play. But also the credibility is shot. If you're going to tell me it's an N1 every time your team touches the ball, maybe when there really is an N1, I might miss it because you're just saying it all. It's like the boy who cried wolf. So I think the coaches that understand that and also can communicate well with us, I think it just makes the game itself is just a whole lot better. And I think we all, teams, players, coaches, officials, get better when we're all working together like that.
That reminds me, there's a particular coach in Loudoun County that complains on every single call. I've never seen anything like it before, but we don't want to get particular. Now, you were talking about as an official, you guys sometimes admit you're wrong. Have you ever had a coach to give you a hard time? And maybe you had to tee him up, but just told you missed a call. It was the worst call ever. Did you ever have an official, that coach watch the films and call you back that week and say, you know what? Oh, your apology. You got that one right. I watched the film on that and you were right. Does that ever happen to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to give a technical. Well, I did give a technical, but it wasn't because of the coach's reaction.
Yeah.
I had a play, and I won't name the teams or the coaches because that may get us into what you just didn't want to do 30 seconds ago. I have a suspicion it may be the same. So I'm working a game. We have a 3-shot foul. I am, as Scott talked about earlier, the center official. So I'm at the free throw line extended opposite the benches. We shoot the first free throw, and we're opposite that team's bench. And my partner, who's in the trail, blows his whistle and he goes, Adam, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He goes, a kid just came off the bench in the backcourt and substituted with a kid on the court, kind of like a hockey substitution.
Mm.
I said, no way. He goes, I'm telling you, it happened. I'm like, oh, good golly. So we go to the scorer's table, and the scorer, the timer, it's the home school that did this. They're all like, yeah, it happened. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at getting out of what I would call administrative technicals, but I'm not sure how I'm going to get out of this one. So we administer a technical. And there's another piece to this story that I'll tell you offline, but the coach is now yelling at me that it's our fault. You know, how do you let that happen? And I said, our fault? How many assistant coaches do you have? You can't keep your kids on the bench? Lo and behold, about a week or so later, I bump into him and he says, God, he goes, that was really bad. I'm so sorry I yelled at you.
Yeah.
You know, and I never even saw the play, but I knew it had to be bad if my partner was saying, we got a problem here. We have an illegal substitution. So it happens on occasion. I know, going back to the game management call, I talked myself into a really bad call one time. It was 6-0. This is back with, 1-on-1 on 7. It was 6-0 in fouls. I know it. There's none of the 6 I'd want back, and I never saw one that we should have called that the team that still had 0. But I'm looking. Okay, looking for a foul on red. And I found one. The only problem was I don't think there was any contact. And I call it, and the coach is beside. And I go running down to him. I said, Coach, just if you stop yelling for a second, let me say one thing, and then you can yell all you want. He goes, what? I go, that was probably the worst call in the history of basketball. And he looked at me. He said, okay, thanks. I just gave him what he wanted. I wasn't gonna change the call, but I talked myself into a really bad call, and so I don't do that anymore. Yeah. I learned from that mistake. I'm cognizant of it, but I'm not looking for a foul, because when you look for fouls, you'll find something, and sometimes you'll find something that's not even there.
I think we do too much of that. Look for fouls. Scott, do you want to jump in here?
Again, it's just communicating with the coaches. We have some great coaches on both the boys and the girls side in this area. And it's fun to see them evolve. I remember when Amanda at Langley first started coaching, every time she would say something, she would say, excuse me, Mr. and it's gotten to the point now she's like, Scott, what are you looking at? And it's just
Yeah.
like I just kind of laugh. And
Yeah.
I would look at her assistant Clay and be like, man, she's come a long way. And
Yeah.
so
It's great.
it's great to build those relationships. Like I think, there's a lot of coaches in this area that have done it for a long time. And once you have that common respect, even though we may not always agree, there's just some gems that I love walking into, the Tony Bentleys, the Doug Craigs, the Mike Barbies, the David Houston, Mark Ray Mendez, on the girls' side, Kirsten, and Amanda, there's just so many great coaches out there and good people. And so when you have that communication, it just makes it, I think it makes it better for everyone. Um, Noelle Klippenstein always talks to me about how people won't talk to her, but she loves it when I go into the gym because she knew that she could have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
Now, Noelle would probably talk too much, but that's okay. I probably, you know, reciprocated that. But
Yeah.
to Adam's point, it makes the game better for everyone if we're communicating with them respectfully, they're communicating with us respectfully. And by the way, we're going to get some plays right and wrong. They're going to put the wrong sub in. Somebody's going to turn the ball over that they just put in. But we're all in this together, trying to grow it. And I hope that that's what the coaches see too.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been great. I did want to end, and we definitely should do this more often. But I did want to end with the situation. Adam mentioned earlier that there's like 51 high schools or 52 high schools that we service now. Um, we don't do Prince William County anymore, and I believe that's Bull Run or Battlefield. Is it Bull Run? It's called. Does about Bull Run?
Bull Run does we still have Garfield.
Garfield.
Uh,
Okay. That's interesting. Well, so the other day, a couple weeks ago, Patriot played South Lakes. Huge, high-profile game. The number 1 and 2 teams in the state. Great game. And so, the Bull Run officials, I recognize all of them because there's not that many officials down there. So I've seen them over the years. Fine officials. But I just felt a level of tension in the air when you have a team coming from out of the area and when we have a different association, South Lakes, coming and you're playing at Patriot that's serviced by different officials. I feel like there's pressure on those officials either to call it fair or, look, when I go up there, I'm getting home cooking. So I want that down here. Do you guys feel those forces? I mean, is that a legitimate thing? On the other hand, I saw a game the other day where Patriot went down to Hampton, and I watched the game online, and they had the officials from down there, and I thought those guys had one hell of a good game, called a great game. So I mean, these forces don't have to affect the game. You can still get great officiating, even though you don't have kind of a one tribunal that's adjudicating the whole area. Uh, are these forces real, or do you think these are things in my mind that I'm just worried about that don't really have an effect?
I'm happy to start because I can tell you personally, I don't feel those forces.
Mm.
The only thing that I'm cognizant of when I have a team that we typically do and a team that we don't do. Okay, so that's the way I look at it. I don't look at it one of our teams, but here's a team that we service and a coach that we know, and here's a school, or it could even be a new coach at one of the schools we do service. What I'm cognizant of is making sure that if I'm going to talk to coaches, which I'm going to do, is that I am making sure I'm spending equal amount of time. That I'm not just talking to one coach, the guy that I know or the girl that I know, the gal that I know, as opposed to not the other one because I don't know who he or she is. So to me, that's the only thing that I'm cognizant of when I have a team that I don't typically do, or out of our area or not one that we service. I do think a lot of that is perception,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, everybody thinks that we're going to get home cooking. We're going to get home cooking. That must be the coach's cousin, his brother, and his second. I think I think that's what people do. When I
Yeah,
say people, I mean fans. You know, uh, that's my opinion. I don't know
yeah,
if Scott agrees, disagrees, or whatever.
yeah,
yeah, so I would just say I think it's human nature. Like it must have been passed down from generations to generations that there's this thought that that's happening. And yeah, to Adam's point, I just want to make sure that I am communicating and that our officials are communicating responsibly with both schools in the right way. I do think that uh, there are some places and schools that might feel that they're uh, getting home cooking when they go somewhere. I think some schools from Cardinal Association will go down to the Bull Run, and Bull Run will come up here. And I'll just tell you, I watch the game videos and I hear about some of the things, and in our cases, I talk to the officials that are doing the games, and um, you know, there's just no evidence of any of that. And yeah, I just think that coaches want the best for their kids, and I don't want to say anything that will denigrate them. I would say this a few years back. It might have been on your podcast, Julie. It might have been on somebody else's. I really appreciated what Sherman Rivers from Patriots said about the importance of playing in the Wakefield League and playing schools down at Virginia Beach and coming up to a school that we service. That he was getting his kids ready for what it looked like to be refereed by different associations,
Hmm.
and that maybe their home association doesn't call things as tight as maybe another association does, but that by giving them that experience, that the kids would be more prepared. I love that outlook. Now, when they come up here, do we always get calls right? No, nor do teams go from other places. But I know for a fact that those games have a higher profile in some cases. When you get a team like Green Run that comes up here, or you get Patriot, or you get Potomac, or you get John Marshall, one of these schools that comes that's well known, and they come up here. I know that the commissioner is really focused to make sure that they have officials that at least they have the official that can communicate the best with that crew, with those teams. Doesn't mean that you're getting the best three officials, because we have 52 schools, right? So you know, we're going to be equitable, but we are going to pay attention to make sure that that game has, an Adam or a Gill or a Jeff Wiggins or a Dickie V doing the game, because we know that from a game management and communication standpoint, that we can trust that the game is going to be adjudicated in a way and communicated with the coaches.
Yeah.
Sometimes that doesn't happen, and I hear coaches saying things, uh, but the tape doesn't lie, and I go back and look, and I know when we've had a bad game. Uh, Adam and I probably break down more game video of our officials than anybody ever has. We used to break them down weekly, just to try to help our guys get better and gals get better. But I think I honestly I appreciate Sherman Rivers saying that in that interview a couple of years back, and I wish that more coaches would consider doing that. I think it's great for the game too. Like, when you get a South Lakes going down to Patriot, or you get a John Marshall or a Green Run coming to Cardinal game or a school, I think it's just great for basketball. That's why holiday tournaments are kind of fun, to get some of these matchups you wouldn't normally see. Um, you know, I appreciate some of the showcase events that happen, but I also I will just share this. I have a negative um, slant towards AAU basketball, because there's a lack of security for officials.
Hmm.
We don't do those games, AAU games, for that reason. Um, but man, there's some great games that you could do if it's in the right environment with the right game management in place.
Yeah. I remember back in the 80s talking about what Sherman Rivers said. The perception was that the officials let the boys play in other parts of the state. So when the Northern Region teams would play, it was more of a physical style that we struggled with when we went down to the state tournament. Those kind of perceptions have ended. I think sometimes up here our referees are seen to let let them play more than other parts of the state now. But that was our perception from 40 years ago, and it was helpful to have experience, with referees who were going to let you play if you were going to, play in that context in the state tournament. So,
Especially when you get to the state level, Julian. I mean, I will just tell you, we do a lot of evaluations of our officials to identify the ones that we think are ready. They're not getting the average, uh, second year varsity official or the one that can't keep up with play anymore. You're getting officials that are held in high regard in each association, and I think that's doesn't matter which association it is. I talk with Jamie, who helps us run the camp down at Shenandoah, and he was just talking to me about, when do you give new officials a chance versus giving somebody else, a year off from that. And for us, it's always been merit based when it comes to state level.
yeah, that's the way it should be. So, well, guys, this has been amazing. I appreciate you taking time. I love talking to refereeing with you. Hopefully, your guys' work and attracting and retaining more of the talent will continue to pay dividends, because we can't have these great basketball games if we don't have officials like yourselves to be able to work these games. So, look, again, I really do appreciate your time. Hopefully, we can get together before the end of the season and talk again.
Great. Thanks, Julian. And I'd be remiss in the spirit of recruiting and retaining officials if I didn't say, hey, Julian, come back.
Exactly. I think one day I will. I just I do miss it. I do miss it. The camaraderie, working with you guys would be fun to do a game again.
Just keep bringing your son along. That's good.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I've been talking a lot of trash on this podcast. If I go out there, like, this guy's not as smart as he says he is on this podcast. He doesn't even know what a travel is. So,
nobody does. Don't worry.
Exactly. So let him play. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch and do it again later on in the season.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Nice seeing you, Julian.
All right, guys, enjoyed it. Yep. Take care.
Peace.